Hello, and welcome to Point of View, where we give students a place to listen, learn, and lean in. I'm your host, Marcus Kim, and today I'm joined with our principal, Mr. Neuhaus, as we discuss a wrap-up for the 2022 and 2023 year. So, Mr. Neuhaus, how are you doing today?
Marcus, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for asking, and thank you for having me on another episode.
That's good to hear. It's always a great day to be a Titan, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
All right, so Mr. Neuhaus, in retrospect for this year, coming into your first year as principal at Northview, of course, you had some expectations for what might happen. Can you tell us about like an event or time that totally just broke your expectations?
Okay, you're going to go dive right into the deep stuff.
Of course, yeah.
So right into the deep end. Expectations for this year, I was principal at Shake Reg, so I know what the community expects of our students. So I wasn't really surprised by any of that, but I was surprised, and maybe it's a perception that I had, not our community, but you always hear about high school teachers, and you hear about how. Maybe you don't always hear, but the premise of it is elementary teachers love kids. Middle school teachers love their teams. High school teachers love their subjects. Mm-hmm. So kind of, being an elementary teacher, I'm always around, or elementary principal, I'm always around teachers that love being around kids. So kind of expected, to kind of have that same, expectation here. But I was really kind of surprised in really a good way. And it happened at our softball teacher appreciation night. So teachers were given jerseys to come, hey, can you come and watch me play? Every teacher that was given a jersey showed up for those kids. And that kind of was the big surprise for me because these teachers here, yes, they're subject experts and they know more about some subjects than I will ever know. But they also love their kids. It doesn't always translate or you don't always see it. Mm-hmm. But night after night, going to events, whether it's academics, whether it's athletics, whether it's arts, these teachers are showing up. So that really just surprised me. It made it into something that's a really good thing, that these high school teachers, they love their subjects, but they do also love their kids. It defied those expectations kind of in a really good way, mm-hmm. But it surprised me.
That's great to hear. Could you tell us maybe a little bit more about your experiences talking and getting to know students on a more personal level?
Sure. That definitely I have an advantage of I've known some of the students from when they were little. That having that little kernel of a relationship's been great. Sometimes I don't recognize the kid, from when you're 8 to when you're 17, like there's a big difference, right? But I recognize the kernel of the student that I used to know. So I've really enjoyed that piece of it, a little bit of full circle. And, then there's been just lots of great kids here at Northview that have definitely wanted to get to know me. I can't say that I know all of our kids as much as I would like to, but there's a lot that I've really enjoyed just kind of getting to know. Mm-hmm. Whether that's at lunch, whether that's, after in all these athletic or academic or the arts events, just, developing those relationships has been great. Mm-hmm. Some students are just, they really seek out and they want that relationship. Others, it's a little harder, because school can be tough. Mm-hmm. But I'm enjoying it. First semester, I had a little rock, paper, scissors game with one student. Crushed him. Second semester, he got my number. But little stuff just like mm-hmm. that I enjoy and have fun with. So definitely enjoying getting to know the kids.
Right, you mentioned sports games and extracurricular events at Northview. Would you say there were any standout that you found yourself enjoying more than you thought you would?
Both my girls did theater, so I knew I was going to love that. So I've been involved with that since elementary school. I know the work it takes to do that, from not only, the kids on stage, but all the work beyond. So I knew I would enjoy that, and I did, and I've blown away with the stuff that I've seen here at Northview, even though we're a little limited in some of the equipment, and we're working on that. But I would say that the sporting events, I've never been to a softball game before. So that was the first one. And I love sports. I grew up playing baseball. I grew up playing football. Basketball is my favorite, but I've never been to a lacrosse game. So I got to experience that. So I think I just have enjoyed, the multitude of activities that our students excel in. So that's been my favorite part. I think just seeing beyond the traditional, football, basketball, baseball, how good our kids are at some of the other stuff and how hard they try and want to compete.
I always hear about, like football, basketball, baseball, but a lot of times at Northview, I've actually like seen a lot of like more niche sports, and I've found a lot of my fellow peers are very, very invested in their sports of choice. Like I didn't even know Northview had a golf team until this year.
Very successful golf team, as well as tennis and swimming and, volleyball and like all those other sports. And we have a flag football team now. Just lots of opportunities for our students.
Right. And on the note of sports programs, even though I don't really do any sports at Northview, I'm more on, I kind of don't even take that many AP classes either, but what would you say your roadmap is for our sports or even arts program?
I don't know that I have a roadmap. I want to encourage our students to continue to do those things. Northview has a reputation of being an academic institution, and, we're really, when you peel it back a little bit, we're way more than that. We have more state championships than any high school in the surrounding 20 miles from us. It might not be in basketball or football, but it's in some of those other sports. Our esports is, we're competing year after year for the championship. So I would say we just want to continue to look at how can we excel beyond just the academics. When kids are thinking about going to college, they want to know more than just your AP scores. They want to know, how did you help make the school a better place? What did you do to contribute and compete? So my roadmap is really just to continue to encourage students to participate in all those things. And then to continue to get our teachers to show up, to show that support. We're really good at showing up for the academics. But if you go to these athletics, you go to the arts, you'll also see 10, 15, 20 teachers that show up to support that. So I just want to continue to encourage kids to do it, and our teachers and staff to keep showing up and supporting it.
Right. Thank you so much. You mentioned that Northview is a very, academically inclined institution, and, I couldn't agree more. Northview is a very competitive school. However, it's not just about, the top scores in our class. Would you say that you're making efforts to help students who may not be as academically inclined or who might need academic support in our class?
Sure. We've definitely recognized that there are a lot of students that excel and they need very limited support from school. We just need to have class. We need to provide the opportunity, and these students take it and run. But we also recognize that not every student is that way. And COVID certainly hasn't helped, whether that's with creating some foundational gaps or creating some habits that are not healthy towards, being successful. So we definitely recognize that. Part of my challenge this year has been to create some strategies for teachers so we can respond systemically, which, we're working on. We don't have it all in place right now, but we're working on it. So any student that doesn't do well is going to get a response, and that response is supportive. How can we help you? Can we reteach this? Can we retake an exam? If those things don't happen, then, what can we do to make sure that students learn? Sometimes we just expect it all to come from students, and that's that might be the case if you have a really high achieving student that didn't do well. They're going to be the first one to say, hey, what can I do to make this up? Students that don't do so well sometimes are like, well, I just didn't do well. Let's just keep moving. Well, the problem is you can't just keep moving if you don't have that foundation.
Right.
You build a house. If you don't have the solid foundation, the house is crumbling, right? So same kind of a concept with our learning. We have to be systemic in it. We have to make sure that there are opportunities to reteach and to remediate all of our kids, not just the ones that recognize it and stumble a little bit, but the ones that really struggle. So we're working on creating that systemically. We've rolled it out to our teachers, and we're going to roll it out, next year for all of our students. So it's been something we've been working on kind of all year, especially as I learn Northview. That'll be something that we'll see next year be really more consistent. When you fail a test, this is what happens.
Right.
When you don't turn in assignments, this is what happens. Because those little things matter. Now, it might not matter if you're just super smart and you can pass without, turning in assignments, but if you need to do those little assignments because they're foundational, we got to make sure you're doing them and you understand it. So that's kind of on us as educators. How do we make sure these things are happening along the way? Can't do it for the student, but we want to do everything we can to help the students be successful.
And obviously, when you're coming up with solutions or new policies, it's a little bit hard to balance it between, all levels of classes, as might be obvious, like a policy in an AP class will not really work that well in an on-level class, or a policy made for on-level classes might not work that well in an AP class. So of course, student feedback is always important. Could you maybe tell me a little bit about how you're trying to increase either student census or student feedback in these next upcoming years?
Sure. And I think that's a great question, because that's probably an area where I need to grow and I need to improve upon. One of the things I want to do, and we'll probably roll this out in the next week or so, is to create a principal advisory group. I know I wanted to do it early in the year. I just didn't have the capacity and didn't make it happen. Where I can get seniors, juniors, sophomores, and then kind of maybe second semester roll some freshmen into it, where I can meet monthly and push stuff out to this group so we can get feedback. One of the things that we did do this year is we were looking at some mental fitness, and we worked with our student ambassadors, and I was very cognizant in asking this group, hey, give us feedback. We partnered with Pathways to Life to kind of help us, and this group said, put the brakes on it. This is not what we want. So we listened and we developed a different plan. So that, I want to hear from our students. It just, we used that group, the student ambassadors, to kind of get feedback, and I need to create that same group for academics and kind of leadership things. So working on that. To your point about, we need a really diverse group, because what works for an AP, student taking all AP classes might be very different than a freshman that's, on all level classes. What is the same, though, is we want to give feedback and we want to make sure the supports are there, because if an AP student needs support, I want to give it to them. If a freshman, all on level needs support, I want to give it to them. So working on that. What would you call a student principal advisory group?
For me, a principal student advisory group would be something that would encompass all students of all ages, but obviously, between like freshman to senior, but also a diverse group of students in terms of academics. Because what I have experienced is a lot of times student council, student leadership positions are often mainly taken up by students who want that on the resume, who want that to put down for college. And a lot of times, at least from my experience, the majority of either student ambassadors, student leadership, or even student council are all high achieving academically. So my only concern might be that a student leadership or a student ambassador group might just be biased, as maybe the majority of them might be.
So I would have to just be really intentional to get a group that represents all aspects of our student body.
Right.
Okay, duly noted.
Actually in journalism, a lot of times when we're scouting out students for the next year, we actually get recommendations from literature classes. So maybe you could get recommendations from different teachers across all levels, subjects, and maybe some students that they think could give an interesting perspective for a student ambassador group.
Okay, perfect.
On that note, for the student ambassador group, that was maybe a program that you wanted to start rolling out in this next year. Do you think that there are any other programs or classes or pathways that you either want to support or even introduce at Northview?
So I definitely want to do the student leadership group, and that's a little bit personal. I want to make sure I'm getting student input on anything we're doing that could affect students. It also helps me make sure I develop relationships with students, right? When you meet monthly, you're going to develop that relationship. I think it's important too that we continue to focus on the mental fitness of our Northview students. School's hard. It's not a uniquely Northview thing, right? It's hard at Johns Creek. It's hard at Chattahoochee. It's hard at Mount Pisgah. Like, school is just really hard right now. And we got to work on how do we help students navigate that. So that's something that's important to me. It's just really that mental fitness. It's that ability to bounce back. That failure is really just stop trying. We have to understand that. It's, every mistake you make is a step in the right direction as long as you recognize it. And it's important too that I think students recognize that voice in their head. Make sure it's kind. Right. That's the voice you're going to hear your whole life. And we have an opportunity to, often we're our own worst critic and we beat ourselves up and we don't treat ourselves the same way we would treat our best friend. And so I think if we can kind of shift that focus, but really work on that mental fitness. And, there's no way to get rid of stress. Stress is part of life. It's part of how we're all wired and we're going to endure stress. But how do we take that? And, you can't constantly live at a stress level of 8 or 9 or 10. Like, that's not sustainable. So how do we find that balance? And that's important. And that's something I think we have to do for ourselves, because society is not going to do it for us. Society is going to continue to push the stress buttons.
Right.
We have to take control of that. And there's no easy answer with that because, like I said, life, is hard. So I just want to keep putting that at the forefront and continue to work on that mental fitness.
That's something that I can really relate to as a student. Even no matter what classes you're taking or kind of like what you're doing, school is pretty stressful. It might not always be like the classes, but just the circumstances of being a teenager is just, sometimes it can just stress.
Well, and honestly, some of the stuff you learn, you're like, what am I going to do with this? And not everything you learn will you do something with, but it's just part of that whole broad education. And some of it is just, it's a challenge. Then you put in all those other expectations and we have so many smart students here. We have to also realize the balance, and success is not something that someone else should define for you. It's something you've got to define for yourself. And I want to encourage students to own that.
And, Northview does have a lot of expectations, right? A lot of times the expectations can either expectations like from yourself, from your peers, teachers, or parents. A lot of times the expectation is what also adds to the stress. After this first year and seeing how the freshmen of this year kind of are dealing with transitioning from middle school to high school, do you think you would have any advice for incoming freshmen this year or this next coming year?
Put the phone away. That's my best advice. I think society is doing a disservice to not just students, but to everyone. And we're living on our phone instead of living in the world. And I hate it for our kids. It's not a choice that they're making. It's just the way that the world is. I'd say put that phone down, engage in real conversations, put yourself out there and try things, and expect to not be perfect at it.
Right.
The phone creates this expectation of perfection and you think everyone's getting it right the first time. No one's getting it right the first time, but that's not the way it's perceived. So I would say put those phones down, get involved in things that are maybe outside your comfort zone, try things that are new, and then don't like it, then try something else. But you got to put yourself out there.
Right.
I think so many people just retreat into the phone because it's safe, because, you can control some of what you see, but put it away, get out in the real world, and engage in those conversations, engage in those relationships, and enjoy the moment a little bit. Some of school is going to be hard, and a lot of it's going to be hard, but there's joy to be found when you're looking for it too. Right. So go find those things of joy.
Thanks. And finally, for our last question, before we kind of wrap up and end things, do you have anything to say to the seniors that you're sending off this year that are going on past high school, and no matter where that might be? Do you have any words to say, to kind of tell them?
I say put those phones down.
Again,
senior, when you get a little bit of maturity, like you realize that, this Be Real app, and I'm sorry, if it's real, it's not on your phone, right? So I just, you kind of learn and understand that relationships are the key to life. Right. And I would say almost the same thing about success. Don't let other people define you. Don't let your success be defined by other people. My favorite definition of success is from John Wooden, UCLA coach, winningest coach of NCAA basketball history. Success is peace of mind in knowing that you've done your best to be the best that you're capable of being. So success is really about you being the best version of yourself possible. As seniors leave us, I challenge them to explore and try, and, life don't let it be pigeonholed. You don't have to do what your parents thought you do or I would do. Explore and go for it. And then just remember about being kind, because the world needs more kind people. I need your generation to go fix a lot of the problems, and we don't fix them unless we have good relationships, unless we're kind. So that would be my hope, and I'm very optimistic about the future, because you and our Northview seniors are just fantastic, and you're great people.
Thank you so much.
And I'm excited for the way we can make the future better.
Well, thank you so much for this chance to kind of get your input and feedback on this last year. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be interviewed by us.
Right. You're welcome.
Well, thank you so much.
All right.
So thank you very much. This concludes our episode and interview with our principal, Mr. Neuhaus. Thank you very much for listening or even watching. For a transcript of this episode, you can head to the Point of View tab on our website, nhsmessenger.org, and follow us on either Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at nhspointofview. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Neuhaus. And I've been your host, Marcus Kim, and this has been Principal Neuhaus. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.